Hey guys, welcome back. Got this question this morning, wanted to get this answered. Why do you not talk about the contract disputes between railroads and employees? Now, the reality is the internet is full of negativity about the rail industry. If that's what you're into, Google is a much better source than TikTok or YouTube. I choose not to participate in those discussions via video content. Here's why. Most of the men and women in the industry that take to the rails every day spend a large majority of their shift talking about those issues, talking about what contract changes affect them personally. They commiserate for 80% of their workday. This can be incredibly draining if you're still trying to hold on to the positives and enjoy the things that you still love about the job and the industry as a whole. My content needs to be an escape from that. Now, my videos are set to serve two purposes. One is education, and two is entertainment. If you're looking for policy content, this is not the place to find it. That being said, it's not that I don't have these discussions. I actually have them every day with viewers and followers like this gentleman here. So if you'd like to discuss it, by all means, reach out to me on Facebook, YouTube, TikTok in the comments section, Instagram, etc. We can chat. But I choose not to include these topics in my content because that's what everyone with a rail-driven platform is doing. I wanted to create a place where potential rail candidates, current employees, retirees, and rail enthusiasts could congregate and not worry about the backlash, the judgment, and the agendas that are often pushed in Facebook groups or social media. Now, I wanted to create a community where people can ask questions without fear of the response from the collective. If you've ever participated in a group, you would see immediately when someone asks a question that they genuinely don't know the answer to, they're ridiculed mercilessly until they either apologize for asking the dumb question or they leave the group entirely. It's not that these policies and news topics aren't important. It's just that it's not helpful or positive. If you thrive on negativity, it's not hard to find that on the internet. To illustrate this point, I'm actually going to share a conversation that I had over on YouTube with a subscriber that perfectly illustrates my stance on that point. And hopefully it becomes clear as to why I choose not to share that content with my audience. So the comment that came in was from a gentleman, and I'll pop this up on the screen here. He said, "We need to discuss, however, throwing trainees to forced markups 12 weeks after they start in Georgia. This is absolutely ridiculous, and just from what I've heard, so far it's resulted in 3 derailments. I cannot in good conscience suggest that anyone work for NS after 9 weeks of OJT, roughly 50 days, you're forced to mark up when you're ready or not. The only thing that this will do is cause property damage, in injury and deaths to employees and members of the public, not to mention that it puts new employees at an insane liability for getting fired or being put on the street for good." I'm going to give you my answers to these as I go through the conversation, just so you understand my standpoint, and hopefully this makes this abundantly clear. So my response initially here is, the shortening of the training period is a huge concern, and it has been for the last few years. It's unfortunate that you don't feel comfortable suggesting that candidates consider NS as a viable option. The training program has shortened significantly for all Class 1s. There were guys on the crews that I've worked with that worked for $500 a week, and they didn't even get to mark up for 9 months to a year. Some of them got furloughed before they could even mark up. The safety of the candidates has to be the number one priority. Even if that's not the case for the current company policy, it is the case here on this platform. My goal is to help every candidate through onboarding, conductor training school, and as much of OJT as possible. I want them to stay safe, make their money, and go home. I can't control the process, and I can't vouch for why they made the decisions they have to shorten the OJT portion of training, but what I can do is try my best to be part of the solution and not part of the millions of disgruntled employees, retirees, rail buffs, and corporate hags that spend their time polluting the internet with diatribes of negativity and hoping they crumble or run their billion-dollar industry the way I think they should. Let's keep in mind that I absolutely agree with you and the sentiments of the argument. They are just not productive or helpful to my audience or community who have chosen to give the rail career a real shot. I hope that makes sense. The response that I got to this was, I agree with you, But just as much as they preach about working weekends and crappy schedules and nasty weather, that people should know that the cards are going to be stacked against them more than the cards have been stacked against someone who went through training in previous years, because I've seen too many people just in my short time leave decent jobs that were perfectly fine and take the leap of faith. I don't knock them for taking the leap of faith, but I also don't want to be bitter and angry because they got fired or killed or substandard training was part of the process. The only reason I think they've gotten away with it so far is that supply chain and demand is through the roof, and there's yet to be a big story in the news to get people's attention to this issue. I, for one, never hope that it gets that bad, and we'll see if this continues down this path. My response here is going to sum up perfectly why I post the content that I do and why I choose not to share information like this as a video format. I will absolutely have these conversations with you guys in the comments section through personal message, but this will not end up in my standard content. So my response to them was, I think most people do their research before taking the plunge. All of the issues that we're discussing here are pretty prevalent within the first few pages of a Google search. I'm not sure what your training or onboarding was like, but I spent a fair share of time talking with instructors and crew that laid out the risks of the job. My recruiter actually did mention that onboarding as a process has been accelerated, which prompted me to look into it further. Now, I'm not saying that my experience is exactly the same as everyone else's, but let's be honest, the onboarding process at NS isn't exactly ideal, especially if you need a job right now. In my experience, I've met very few people that have left great careers or decent paying jobs for the railroad. If they're willing to leave their current employer, they're not happy with that job for more than that reason. It's not because they're being promised a job experience that it's, above and beyond industry standards with no drawbacks. Every onboarding pitch is filled with 100 reasons you should not take the job. They actually actively try to talk you out of it in most cases, especially when you're someone like me who's coming in with an MBA and 15 years worth of professional experience. It's not up to me to decipher whether or not the railroad would be a better or worse situation because I don't know every viewer or follower personally. I'll be the first to say that the job isn't for everybody, but mistakes such as derailments and industries happen to guys 2 days out and engineers that have been in the seat for 30 years. I've had close clearance incidents in a yard within the first 2 weeks on the job. An engineer flat out ignored my radio call to stop 3 times. Luckily for me, that stuff is recorded, and I had a conductor on the other side of the car that heard the whole thing. This is a dangerous job. Would a longer OJT period be beneficial? Absolutely. These guys and girls should do their research and understand that things have changed, but most won't, and most don't really care to do that research. The second they type any railroad name plus safety incidents plus training challenges or, God forbid, railroad employee advice, the onslaught begins. From my perspective, these folks are going to take the job if the needs are being met by the offer that the company has given them, none of which I have any control over. All I can do is educate and hope that the potential candidates understand that safety isn't some cute slogan. Every day is a challenge, and no amount of money will replace your presence at the dinner table. Is it a dangerous career? Absolutely. Is it a steep learning curve? Sure. Is it right for them? I have no clue, but I won't deprive them of the opportunity to try. Not after I've seen firsthand what a life in the rail career provides. Not after I've watched them pay millions of dollars in medical bills and pension disbursements and recently death benefits for my grandfather. So we'll have to agree to disagree, I suppose, which isn't quite right either, because I think we agree on mostly everything except that I would recommend people take the job and you wouldn't. In the end, I hope that your efforts to warn people of the dangers are fruitful. I hope that the railroad changes OJT's policy. I hope that we continue to wake up without having to read headlines of industry injuries, derailments, or worse. But the fact remains that people will continue to onboard. I'm going to continue to help them when I can and use my tiny platform to support their efforts to obtain a healthy and long-lasting rail career. And you, well, I hope you start a channel, a blog, a TikTok, a Facebook group, or something of the like where your opinions can be met with like-minded people who can find a way to change policy or help candidates find another job within the industry, or maybe even with a different company or in a different field where you feel compelled to guide them along their path and keep them safe and fed and inspired. Wishing you the best, Curtis. The way that I'm combating this shortening of training is to help with the class content before you even get to the training center. So you can put your focus on the physical mechanics of the job, like mounting moving equipment, switching, radio communication, establishing protection, completing car inspections, brake inspections, reading a wheel report, understanding train consists. If I can help you get a jump start on the education portion, training will be a little less stressful. Your confidence will build earlier, which will help you if you happen to be pushed into a markup sooner than you may feel comfortable. You can also use that free headspace to maintain your relationships and work closely with your family to manage the insane change to your schedule. The reason most of those conversations in households go poorly is because your head is filled with mountains of new information and none of which teaches you to manage your home life. My goal is to educate my audience so that they no longer need me. And in turn, by taking the position that I do on negativity and how much of it I allow into my daily life and how much I suggest you allow into yours, my hope is that they will simply pass that mentality on to the next conductor they meet or the next one they oversee on the next train out. I hope that makes sense. I'm always open to a good conversation, so feel free to comment below and let us know. How do you keep your spirits up when you're surrounded by negative coworkers? What do you do every day to ensure that somebody doesn't back their garbage truck up and dump all of their emotional and agenda-driven negativity into your lap? I'll see you guys on the next one, and I hope that's made this clear as to why I don't share this type of content on my platform. See you later.